Hi everyone, welcome to Single Value. So today we're looking at Rocket Lab, and it's been a while since we've done a video. Like, the stock just kind of like quietly performs. Like, it doesn't report a lot of things, but when it does, it's quite progressive, quite high value, and that's the awesome thing about this stock. It's one that really just continues to work. There's not a lot you have to worry about. And hence why the share price has really performed. Like, over the years they've been building a lot of value, and now it's starting to be really recognized in the revenue, particularly with space being very important now and going forward, and especially with Rocket Lab starting to get everything together for Neutron. And once Neutron's ready for launch, and if that's successful, then they can compete against SpaceX, which is pretty big news. There's not a lot of companies that can say they can compete with SpaceX, but this is one company that will. So SpaceX is looking at about $350 billion kind of valuation, whereas Rocket Lab is $13.6 billion. So that difference is so large that there's so much room for Rocket Lab to kind of grow, and so much value for the stock to continue to rise, that it's definitely a stock that you just want to keep watching, even though it's risen up so much. Literally, like, the bottom of the stock was like $3.30, and then you look at the share price now, it's $27. So if this stock potentially goes to $30 or just over, it's potentially done about nearly 10 times. So that's pretty awesome stuff. Like, no one who was holding the stock at the start of the year would have guessed where it was today. They would have known the stock had really high potential, but for it to go up this much, like, that's pretty incredible, especially when you look at what's happened throughout the most of the year. Like, it's been a really quiet stock. That's where you look at the business and you go, things are slowly progressing in a really good way. Like, their growth has been phenomenal in a sense, going, to get like over 100%. That kind of growth is pretty phenomenal. And then you kind of go, especially their revenues are growing really well because their existing businesses are doing really well. And then you look at the other part, that they've got Neutron, which is going to really add a large chunk of business to the existing business, and that's a really good formula for a stock to just go ballistics. So yeah, like, the focus next year is outright going to be Neutron. We're possibly 6 months away before Neutron is going up. Of course, there's potential for delays. You can never tell with rocket stuff, but right now everything seems to be on track. There's confirmation that everything's on track, so things are looking really good right now. And closer to the launch, the share price is going to go higher, because the minute they are successful, they start winning a lot of contracts that in a way would have gone to SpaceX, but in a way SpaceX is so busy that there's actually a lot of contracts to just go to Rocket Lab that SpaceX wouldn't actually even care, which is weird, because as time just goes, more and more companies and governments, they want satellites in space. It's getting to a sense where soon you'll be disadvantaged if you don't directly have satellites in space, or indirectly have a service to have use of satellites, because you're starting to look at, like, cell phones. If a telecommunication company in the future doesn't have that access for you to use satellite, that's going to be a disadvantage to that telecommunication company. So you can kind of see that in the future things are going to be even more competitive. You think about internet. If SpaceX decides one day that they can lower the pricing of going to getting internet access, then all of a sudden your local internet companies is going to start suffering, because they can lower their pricing because they're offering their service to the whole world. So that's completely different. And maybe Rocket Lab one day might decide to pursue that as well, they have said once they get Neutron going, then they're possibly going to start offering these services, which is which is where the real money and the real margins are. So the business becomes a whole new monster once that happens. So once that happens, the market kind of sees this business as being a giant in the future. So in a sense, you are still in a lucky spot where you still get to invest in the company at a pretty okay price, even though it's gone up so much. It's weird, right? Because it's gone up so much, yet it still seems cheap. So it's talk about another, like, you wish you invested in Tesla back in the days. This is almost the same situation. Obviously it's gone up quite a bit, but there's still so much more it can go up. Like Tesla right now is in the trillions, so obviously like that's harder to see that going up 10 times, but for Rocket Lab to go up 10 times is not out of the question even at this current point. But obviously to get there, like, they're going to have to do a lot of work. But if they can get Neutron into the commercial stage, sign a lot of contracts, which they probably will, then things are going to look really, really good. So last month, when they kind of announced that they had just signed on their first commercial contract for Neutron, so mid-2026, they're confident enough that they should have things up by then, that they've already signed a contract for that. Hopefully it's middle of next year, not in like another year after that. So obviously they have some confidence that they should be able to get Neutron up. So they've got under contract. Rocket Lab will launch 2 dedicated missions on Neutron starting from mid-2026. So that's amazing news to hear that they've already started to sign on some partners, well, customers. But the really interesting news as well, is that they're also quite interested in going for this government contract. So Neutron expected to debut launch in 2025, also puts the launch vehicle in a strong position to on-ramp onto the US government's National Security Space Launch Lane 1 program, which is contract value at $5.6 billion over a 5-year period. So you split that over 5 years, you just look at just over $1 billion a year in possible value of that contract. So if they can get things going next year, then they can get in line for that. So that's pretty big stuff. Also, there's another contract worth $986 million as well. So there's billions of dollars up for grabs if they can get Neutron running. So as they get closer to launch, you can almost bet with a certainty that the market is going to drive this stock upwards, because they're going to be generating an incredible amount of revenue if they can get Neutron up. Like, even without Neutron, they're already going on a good pathway, and the business is growing really well, being the dominant launch company for small rockets. But for them to be quite dominant in the mid tier as well, with medium-sized rockets with medium satellites, that's also a whole new category that's even more lucrative. Everything's multiples of the current business, and that's where they really want to be as well. That's where they can offer a lot of value, kind of services with high margins, and once they can get there, they're another SpaceX, and they will be basically benchmarked with SpaceX going forward. And you can basically see if SpaceX is worth $350 billion, it wouldn't actually be they to the simplest way of viewing things, you could say they could be even worth a tenth of that, which is $35 billion. So right now at $13 billion, they've got a lot of room to run, and in a way the risk is not as high as you think it would be for this type of company. Literally the company like Shumasite, Like, if you followed my channel and you watched me obsess over Humicide and watch that share price just abysmally perform, like with the risk that you take, like Rocket Lab is significantly lower risk than that company, which has been much higher risk because firstly they had to go through the FDA approval, and if that got shot down, stock gets heavily affected. And on approval, they didn't look. They're still having a tough time, particularly with tight cash flows, getting the product out, some doubt around side effects. So that itself looks riskier than a rocket business. So like in terms of that, Rocket Lab actually seems quite tame. So it's not often that you see a business that's so well run and that has such a good kind of pathway to building value and growing, that like this is one of the very few opportunities where you find such an excellent business that like it's kind of weird for this business to be valued at this stage. Obviously a lot of the value starts building towards Neutron, so in a way if Neutron does fail, then obviously the stock does take a hit, but it's not a forever failure, because they in a sense can't just have to fix things with Neutron. It's a matter of when. So if something goes wrong with Neutron, maybe a delay, or if they start to need more cash, then they can raise more. Like at $13 billion in terms of valuation, there's plenty of raising room for that. They can raise another $500 million if they wanted to, and get things going. Like I think they quoted the figure of being something like $300 million to build Neutron, which is peanuts. In a sense, like they have enough money to get things going, so, and they can raise more money if they want. The good thing is when you have high valuation, when you raise money, the dilution isn't that large, so they're in a really, really, really good spot where they can just raise money if they need to. So I would, even if things gets a setback, it's just a matter of time before these guys succeed. So anyone that's in the stock for a long term is really going to benefit. Like obviously you still have to be a little cautious around any delays or anything that might go wrong with Neutron, because obviously the current share price is built towards the view of Neutron, and as it gets closer to the middle of 2025, the share price is going to be rocketing towards that. Like you could have seen that with AST Space Mobile, a company that didn't have revenues, yet the share price was just skyrocketing towards their launch. But Rocket Lab is completely different. Like this is a company that's got a really good business already, and it's just a matter of once they get Neutron going, they just continue to build on top of that. So it's not necessarily a thing that they're going from 0 to 1. They're already at 1. They're going from like 1 to 2 to even 10. So it's a completely different kind of game. Most cases, like when people kind of invest in a company, you usually are looking at a story from going from 0 to 1. Like Humicide, the same boat as well. You're going from 0 to 1, where a lot of risk is perceived, and you kind of feel like when you buy into the business that you do take a lot of risk because the business doesn't have any revenues. But Rocket Lab's quite different. They're actually, in a sense, if they didn't do Neutron, they would be profitable. So they are funneling a lot of money and basically absorbing that loss with their profits and some of their cash, obviously. And they're slowly building out an even bigger business, which if they can be successful, which will be in a way quite exciting, like getting into the middle of next year, like any shareholder of Rocket Lab is going to be super, super excited to watch Neutron kind of get ready and launch. So on the other news, they've continued to perform. Like Rocket Lab has successfully increased their launches by 60% this year, which is pretty incredible. So yeah, like this business just keeps on growing and growing and growing. So yeah, like I think basically, like this is they've basically hit the sweet spot. Like you look like back then with Tesla as well, they were kind of grinding for quite a while, kind of building value, building their technology, and then once things really got going, they really got going. Hence why the Tesla valuation shot up so much, because they started entering avenues where margins were significantly higher, like kind of like the self-driving tech, which you pay thousands for, and it's all margin afterwards, after they paid for the initial costs. And Rocket Lab's sort of entering that space as well. So launch is kind of like the lower margin kind of area. Then they're building out satellites, which is slightly higher margin. But then once they can get their own satellites into space and offering their own services, those services are going to be extremely high margin, extremely useful, and extremely in high demand. And that's where they're going to make incredible amounts of money. And that's where they're hoping to go. And like once they announce what they're going to do, obviously they need to get Neutron up and going, and I guarantee you they already have plans what they're going to do. Those announcements are going to send the share price through the roof. Like if you think you're late to the stock, you're actually not. You're really, really early in a sense, because this stock is just getting started. If they weren't making Neutron, then okay, then maybe the stock's kind of in a phase where it hasn't peaked, but it's in the middle. But like the fact that they're going after the bigger rocket kind of shows you how progressive this company is, and basically how much more room they have to grow. So for this company to dominate the small rocket launches, and then after that start dominating the medium-sized rocket launches, that's going to be a different story, a game changer. And once you also think about it, is like with SpaceX, not everyone wants to be a customer of SpaceX, because sometimes it's quite political. Sometimes people don't want to do business with a company that Elon Musk is associated with, because he's associated with like Republicans or the government or something like that, or they just don't like his views, or there's a lot of reasons. And with SpaceX just dominating that area, it means there's a lot of room for a few more players to come in, and kind of get some of the business that other people don't want to be their customer, be like SpaceX. So if Rocket Lab can be successful in Neutron, that is going to be just super for them. I just can't emphasize enough how much like value they will generate if they can get Neutron into space. So in 6 months' time, we will find out if they've launched or not launched yet, or whether they'll be successful in going commercial. But you'll watch the share price, and it's going to just be rocketing. I think there's such a good chance of them being worth $100 next year, that I don't even say it with kind of like hesitation, because I look at the value of this business, and if they can get Neutron commercial, then the stock's gonna go crazy. So anyway, until next time, if you've got any comments or questions, post below, and good luck investing, everyone.